Hello, my name is 𝗀𝗵𝗿𝗁. I'm an independent educator and author in the fields of data visualization and dashboard design. And in this short video, I want to talk about how many slices we can put in a pie chart. And so before I get into this, though, I just want to clear up the probably obvious question that a lot of people are asking is like, should we even be using pie charts? And I have written a detailed article about this, which I will point to now. You can just Google Nightingale, which is the name of the journal that I wrote the article in, and then pie chart, and then my last name. Or I will also post a link to that article in the description of this video. But the bottom line is that I do not think that pie charts are Satan's chart type, and that they are, in fact, just fine in a variety of very specific circumstances. So now, getting back to the kind of question at hand for this video, how many slices is too many slices? And like I said, there's lots of different opinions about this that you'll find, floating around online. And some people will even say that a pie chart like this is actually too many slices, right? There are kind of pie chart hesitant people who say no more than 2 slices, or sometimes no more than 3 slices. But if, let's say, the insight that we needed to communicate about the market breakdown of cookies here was that 𝗀𝗶𝗰𝗿𝗁 here accounted for almost 1/3 of our market, and that the top 3 accounted for more than 3/4 of the market. Well, I think that this chart is actually fine, right? If that's what we're trying to communicate, those are the specific insights that we need the audience to know. I think that this is a pretty effective way of doing it. Now, of course, effective is a relative term, right? We want to compare it to other possibilities, like, for example, bar charts, right? Well, if the insights that we need to communicate, like I said, are that here 𝗀𝗶𝗰𝗿𝗁 have 1/3 of the market, this visually doesn't really look like 1/3 of anything, right? I have to look down at this kind of numerical scale, mentally translate these textual numbers into kind of fractions of a total, or especially something like this, right? The top 3 accounted for more than 3/4 of the market. Yeah, not very clear in a chart like this. If the insight that I was trying to communicate was that 𝗀𝗶𝗰𝗿𝗁 have a much greater market share than the others, right? Where we're basically sort of comparing the parts with one another, then yeah, a bar chart is going to make sense. But if I want to show insights that are more around kind of the fractions of the total that each part represents, I think the pie chart would have been a better choice in this case. And so I think we can definitely go up to 5, 6, maybe even 7 slices pretty comfortably in most situations. But what if we have more parts than that? In this case, there are 15 different brands of cookies. A lot of people will kind of recoil at a chart like this and say, oh, no, it's way too many. But again, we always want to ask ourselves, like, well, what is the point of this chart? What are we trying to say with it? If we're trying to say, for example, that 𝗀𝗶𝗰𝗿𝗁 here has a little over 1/4 of the market, and that the top 2 have almost half of the market, well, I think that these insights are going to be sort of better communicated than they would be in a bar chart or a tree map. Yeah, a bar chart is going to maybe look a little cleaner, but it's not going to be able to actually communicate these insights effectively. But yes, admittedly, this does look a little messy. Is there a way that we could maybe clean this up a little bit? Well, because those smaller brands in this case, those smaller parts, weren't really relevant to the insights that we needed to communicate, we could maybe get away with sort of lumping them together into like an all others category. And then we end up with a pie chart, which is sort of cleaner looking. But let's say we're not so lucky and we actually need to show all of the parts. Like, let's say, our main message was that the cookie market is very fractured with no dominant players, right? And so we can't really hide any of the parts if we need to communicate something like that. And I would argue that even though there are 15 slices here, 15 parts, that is what this chart says, right? This is a highly fractured market with no dominant players. And so in fact, I think that it would actually communicate that insight better than a bar chart would, right? A bar chart, like I said, is good for comparing individual parts with one another. But if the insight is that this is just a highly fractured kind of breakdown of a total, it's not really what bar chart says. If my insight were something like all brands had generally similar market shares, well, yeah, then this would become a good choice. But if I have insights that are more around fractions or breakdowns of total, then I think actually a pie chart is still going to be our best choice here. Are there other possibilities? Yes. I could use what's called a tree map. And to my eye anyways, it's actually pretty equivalent in a lot of ways to the pie chart, right? It's also fairly messy looking with this many parts. And it, but it does also communicate insights like, for example, there's a highly fractured market. Well, yeah, I mean, that is kind of what this says, but it is a little bit harder to visually estimate fractions of a total in a tree map. Like, let's say I had one part that accounted for a third of the total. That's going to be easier to sort of see in a pie chart than it would be in a tree map. And it's also just a less common chart type. And so if my audience is maybe kind of a little bit less data savvy, then I might be biased towards using a pie chart simply because almost everybody knows how to read a pie chart, not necessarily with tree maps. And so I think that there are times where even something like 15 parts could actually work. But let's keep pushing. Let's see, how about if there's like 30 brands of cookies? So yeah, admittedly at this point, a pie chart starts to look kind of ridiculous. But I do actually think that there are certain, admittedly kind of rare situations, maybe like this, where it might actually make sense to have a 30 slice pie chart. If I want to communicate that, these top two brands here had almost half the market, and we're this tiny little player up here. Well, I think this is actually going to be better communicated, this specific, type of insight, than it would be in a bar chart or a tree map. And so what's the bottom line here? How many slices can we include in a pie chart? Well, a couple of key takeaways. As we've seen, I think that pie charts are generally better at showing kind of fraction of total or breakdown of total types of insights than alternatives. And certainly showing up to 6 or 7 parts is generally not going to be a problem, certainly in my opinion anyways. And in certain situations, it can actually make sense to push that much higher, right? Where a pie chart is still the best choice, even if we have 10, 15, 20, maybe even 30 parts. It kind of depends on the distribution of the parts, and more importantly, the purpose of the chart, right? What is the insight that I'm trying to communicate? And so ideally you try your data with a couple of different chart types and see which one best communicates the specific insight, answers the specific question that you designed the chart for in the first place. And that kind of trial and error process can be made a lot easier using one of the decision trees in my practical charts course. And as you can see, there are other alternatives, right? I showed 3 possibilities here, bar charts, pie charts, and tree maps, but there are others. And there are a variety of considerations that go into choosing the best chart type. So yeah, this is one of the decision trees, one of 8 in my practical charts course. If you're interested in taking that course, there is now an on-demand version of it, 6.5 hours of video and 44 lessons. If you use the discount code SAVE20-45 before August 10th, then you can get 20% off. The way to find out about that is on my website, practicalreporting.com. The course is listed right on the homepage. So thanks very much for listening. Let me know in the comments below if you agree, disagree with anything that I've said in this video. If you found it to be useful, please share it around on LinkedIn or YouTube. Thanks very much.